Welcome back. Today we're going to do a quick one on the NF Audio RA15. So the RA15 is another one in their music series. Those of you who are familiar with NF Audio, you know they've done quite a bit of professional style IEMs. They do have a few gaming and music ones, and this one happens to be music. And they tend to differentiate their music and their professional, and you'll see it in the signature. Those who very different signatures. The professional ones tend to really be vocal centric or vocal emphasize or vocal timbre, however you want to call it, but very much aimed towards that part of the signature. The music ones have a different signature, which we will look at in a second, but this is what the RA15 looks like. It is a very nice all metal build. Again, if you're familiar with NF Audio, they've done quite a few all metal builds. They all tend to be very nice, and this one is no different. A very nice, feels nice. It feels a little weighty, probably an alloy, kind of one of those steel alloys that still has some weight to it. It doesn't feel like very lightweight like aluminum. It's got some heft to it and a nice solid feeling. It does have a cable, which is, so again, you can kind of see this one was QDC connector, so you do get a QDC connector right there. You know, decent cable. It's kind of a nice SPC cable. What's a little bit different about RA15 is you do get two sets of nozzles. So you do get a silver nozzle and you do get a gold nozzle. And the tips kind of look like that. They are kind of white silicone tips and have a gray sleeve. So actually a nice set of tips. And I think NF Audio tends to do nice accessory packages. I think the packaging, the cable, the build, you know, the tips, they do all of that very, very well. They're been around quite a while, and it shows in their accessory packages and how they developed it over the years. So no real surprises on what was in the box. So NF Audio RA15. So what is this one? Like I said, it's an all metal build, as you can see. It is a 10 millimeter dynamic driver inside. You do get the two nozzles. This is the silver nozzle, and those are warm and bright. So the silver ones are the bright ones. The gold ones are the warm ones. I happen to like the silver ones. I thought just by looking at the graph, I was actually going to like the warm ones, the gold ones, and that's how I started out. But then I quickly switched over to the silver ones. But graph-wise, you can kind of see this has kind of the DNA of NF Audio's music signature to it. So long arc bass shelf, and then this kind of latent boost to the treble. So they tend to not focus here. If you look at the RG15 or RG, it was an RG something model. This one wasn't all that different from that. I don't remember. I probably have, so RG15. So very similar, had a bass arc, and it had this, it had a more of a V shape. So it had a bigger bass shelf, and it had more treble to it, but a very similar style to this one. So long arc bass, and then you kind of see they kind of boost this kind of later treble area, kind of get a higher end boost out of it, and then kind of keep this pretty close to the Harman target. One nozzle will go sort of under the Harman target, one is kind of right there. And that's sort of the biggest difference between the two is what happens right here in the vocals between the two and how much you hear of this part. But I thought the warm one was probably a little bit too warm. I kind of kept on wanting to hear more detail here. Your ears and your brain are kind of naturally drawn to this part, and when it's slightly below where you're anticipating it to be or what you prefer, how it should sound, it tends to sound a little bit lower resolution. They would certainly call that warmer, but I would just call it, I kept on wanting to hear more out of it. I knew the dynamic driver was actually quite nice. And then when you switch to the silver, you kind of hear exactly what I was hoping to hear. You get more detail, more resolution. It sounds just kind of more resolving than the gold. But I certainly understand why they did a gold and a silver. They're kind of two different signatures, and they kind of work well together. So the sound, I would say that it is a non-traditional V shape, mostly because the bass does have a traditional shape to it, but this later upper treble style boost to it isn't quite what you would normally see in a V shape. V shape would be more of a lower bit right here, kind of right there in the meat of the vocals. That's kind of where you want your emphasis to be and to draw people's attention to really nice, clear vocals. This is a little bit later, so I would call it a little bit non-traditional, but it does have a traditional NF Audio style bass shelf, but just a little later treble boost. And I do like that bass shelf. The treble is something different. If you're very used to Harman styles that kind of rise right up here to the target and then arc over, to hear them rise a little bit later is something different. And some people are very much attracted to different things, but I wouldn't call it an over-energetic upper mid. Like, people are used to hearing lots of energy right here, and you can kind of see they kind of dipped it just a little bit added the energy a little bit later, and it catches you later in that way. And each nozzle basically does have V-shaped style mids. They are going to be a little bit recessed. So on the nozzles, like I said, the silver is going to be the bright one and more treble energy, and it will sound more resolving with the mids. And the gold is the warm one and a little bit more relaxed, a little bit warmer, but also a little bit more intimate presentation. And I think V-shaped mids is more noticeable on the gold, and that was sort of why I switched over to the silver. I thought the gold was a little bit more recessed for my preferences, but I do enjoy the energy of the silver. So on the bass, again, like I said, this is pretty much a nice long arc, so you get a nice split between sub bass and mid bass. They've got both of those covered. You get some nice rumble out of it. You get some nice mid bass for body, some impact, and again, I think NF Audio does a pretty nice bass shelf, and this one is no different. It's a nice dynamic driver. It's actually a pretty nice bass shelf. The treble, and again, I think this is sort of everything about this set. I think the bass shelf is not self-explanatory, but it's actually something more traditional that you're used to hearing. The treble, they've used this one before, like I said, on RG15, and it really differs from their, it definitely differs from their Pro Series, because the Pro Series would definitely have a huge boost right here. So they've essentially slid the boost out later into the treble, and the mids are kind of recessed a bit. Yeah, but there's lots of air on the silver anyway, so yeah, again, this is kind of a little hard one to describe the way it hits you. So those of you who are really sensitive to shout, you have like almost no shout because this is lowered a bit. And then you have a lot of kind of a boost of airiness, kind of this later treble style. Yeah, I thought it was actually kind of really interesting, but some tracks will definitely sound a little bit bright because of the way they boosted. I thought Bruce Springsteen's Born in the USA, kind of right there, right in the beginning, the snare drum I think was hitting like right in the beginning. It's like, yeah, it's a little bit too boosted, a little bit too emphasized in that particular spot for some tracks, but on other tracks you probably aren't even going to notice it. But yeah, I think generally it worked a little bit better for me on electronic music. And the mids is sort of sandwiched in between these two. So nice bass shelf, and then this over energetic kind of V-shaped style treble. You know, you are going to get mids which are going to sit back a little bit, more so on the gold. It may be warm and relaxed, but also sounds a little bit less resolving on the gold. It does need a bit more upper mid. Again, your brain and your ears are kind of drawn right to the spot, and the way they dipped it on the gold is just kind of noticeable that it's sitting back a little bit, and then the signature itself, this is going to be sitting back a little bit. It's just more noticeable on the gold to me, but I think some people are going to like it that way, but for me, it was the silver. I think silver has the energy, and it sounds much later. It has the energy much later, and it definitely pulls the vocals just a little bit higher. But I think the bright is about right for this one. Not really a low volume bright, but, you know, I think it just leans bright, and I think they kind of got that right. But again, really, really tough signature to pull off and sound natural across lots and lots of genres. And it's okay. I think they did a semi-decent job at it. But stage, again, silver has lots of this upper treble energy. It's going to sound wide and high. The gold is going to be a little bit more drawn in and pulled inwards because it's a little bit more intimate sounding, a little bit warmer. You don't have as much of a contribution out here. So yeah, so if you're into stage, definitely the silver. If you don't care about stage, probably the gold is for you. So that's a quick one on the RA15. So thank you guys again for tuning in, and I'll see you next time.